All right, guys, this week on DSLR Film Noob Talk, I've got kind of a new setting here. I'm basically sitting in front of my desktop with a few extra things laying around so you don't have to focus in on the mic. I do recommend checking this out as an audio podcast. There will be links in the show notes so you can visit all of the different threads that I'm talking about and get more in depth on those if you want to. But in general, otherwise you're just basically sitting here watching me talk, which is fine if you're into that, whatever. I'll try and throw a little bit of extra on screen now and again, and if there's something important that I'm showing on screen, I'll try and mention that so for the audio listeners, they can listen to that, hear the cue, and then go check out that particular portion of the video. Anyway, starting out this week, the first thing up on my list is that $49 Teak VR20 field recorder. This field recorder is basically a generic cheap version of the Tascam DR08. The DR08 is around $100, and it's that field recorder with the kind of movable ears on it for the microphones that can be swiveled around and rotated side to side and so on. That unit has the added benefit of being a 24-bit 96K sampling rate, whereas the Teak VR20 doesn't have that option. If you go on to Amazon, you can buy the white version of the VR20 for about $49. And I've placed a hack up on DSLR Film Noob from one of the viewers named Alex. He sent this in. Basically, with a little bit of hex editing, you can turn that $49 field recorder into the $100 field recorder with basically the same build quality, same layout and everything. It's just that there's a software difference between those. And by using that hex hack, you're able to get the software from the DR08 onto the VR20 without much issue. This means you can basically upgrade the unit and get that 24-bit 96K sampling rate that wasn't available before, making it a pretty good bargain to check out. If you're in the market for a field recorder, that's definitely one to consider, especially at $49. Even used Zoom H1s will set you back about $70 or $80. And the Tascam DR05 is still around $70 to $75. So this is a little bit more affordable than those, and you have the optional swivel microphones. Now, moving on from there, I just noticed this week. Rode is basically doing a special with the Rode VideoMic Pro and the Rode VideoMic Stereo units. If you buy one of those at the regular retail price, they're throwing in a copy of Pluralize. If you're not familiar with Pluralize, basically it's a syncing software. So for those of you out there who are recording audio in a separate box, you're using a field recorder or you have like some kind of holster recorder, you're recording audio into your computer for some reason, and you're not recording it directly into the camera, this is an excellent product for syncing that audio up with the video that you shot. The nice thing about the new software is basically they've combined Dualize, which is an independent program, with Pluralize, which was the one that ran inside of Premiere or Final Cut and allowed you to sync in your timeline into a whole group that when you get that software, you get basically a standalone as well as a plugin. So if you don't want to do it in your timeline, which is a little bit more complex and convoluted, you can actually do that outside of the program before you even get started. Now, one thing I will recommend if you're going to try and do dual system sound, you're going to want to make sure, first of all, that the timestamp on your camera and on your field recorder match up. If you set the date and time pretty close together, this means that when you import your clips into a folder, you can sort by time and date, and those clips will start to show up next to each other, which makes it a lot easier for you to figure out what audio clips go with what video clips. This also makes the software syncing a lot more convenient because the software sees the timestamp, realizes that the two pieces of material were filmed and recorded about the same time, and uses that as a reference to start syncing those two together. The other thing I recommend is if you reset the count on your camera as well as the count on your field recorder. For example, if you're using the Zoom H4n, you can just set a new folder and set up the stamp option on there so that the files are named in a sequential order. And with your camera, it'll do the same thing. You reset that count to 0, and then the first file will be 1 in your field recorder as well as in your camera. 2, 3, so on. Each time you press record with both units, you will get a number sequence that matches up with what's in the camera. This also makes it a lot easier if you're trying to use dual system sound. If you're in the market for a affordable microphone, the Rode VideoMic Pro and the Rode VideoMic are definitely mics to consider. The Rode VideoMic Pro still runs $229 new, but when you figure that the Pluralize software is included with it, that's about a $200 program. I don't know if it's really $200 worth of value if you weren't going to buy the program to begin with, but figure that maybe knocks $100 in cost off of the cost of that microphone. And the VideoMic Pro is a very handy on-camera mic. Now, it's a little bit weird to me that they are offering up Pluralize with a microphone that's designed to be plugged directly into your camera. You would have thought they would have combined it with a field recorder or something like that. But it's still a pretty good deal. In fact, I'm probably going to put my original Rode VideoMic up on eBay or on the website for one of you guys out there and trade that up to another VideoMic Pro, because right now I have a VideoMic Pro and the original. The VideoMic Pro isn't much better audio quality wise, but it is really handy, extremely handy to have that cute tiny package that is easier to pack in and doesn't take up as much space in my camera bag, and you still get the same bang for your buck. On top of that, the audio quality of the VideoMic Pro has that extra dB boost to 20 dB of gains. So if you don't have an external gain source like a JuiceLink device or what have you, you can use that gain switch and get a little bit of extra volume out of the microphone in situations where maybe you have a quiet actor or the original Rode VideoMic wasn't putting out a strong enough signal for your camera to pick up. Now, moving on from there, I've been testing this extremely affordable audio interface. It seems like it's kind of an audio heavy podcast this week, but it's called the iRig Pre. The iRig Pre is originally designed to be used with an iPhone or an iPad, basically an iOS device. It has a kind of an odd little 4-ring sleeve on it that isn't standard, that you can't plug directly into your camera. But for about $5 to $8, you can buy an adapter for it, which allows you to plug that directly into your camera. That means that basically you have phantom power in a tiny little box with independent gain control and the option to have the headphones fed out of that box as well. Now, unfortunately, there is not gain for your headphones. There's only gain for the input mic, but that's still pretty handy. The iRig Pre runs about $49. If you look around on Amazon, a lot of times you can find it for as low as $35 or $30 in the used section, which makes it a pretty good bargain for what it is. Now, I'll be posting a full review of that probably next week or the week after once I get a chance to run it through its paces, but I've already posted some audio samples of the iRig Pre in action, both with the phantom power turned on as well as using a passive mic to feed into the camera through the iRig Pre. Both of those audio samples are available on DSLRFilmNoob.com, and they both turned out excellent. The audio quality from this very affordable little preamp is a great quality for what you're paying. The noise floor is somewhere in the minus 60 dB or lower, depending on how strong of a signal you're getting from your microphone, which is excellent for a small device like this. If you need to add XLR and phantom power to something like the Zoom H1 or the DR05 or DR08 or that VR20 I just mentioned, you can simply take the output of this iRig Pre, plug it into the line input on that device, and suddenly you have an extra little self-powered 48-volt phantom power supply for a condenser mic or what have you. That makes it extremely handy and very useful. It's also very small. Right now I am working on a design for the iRig Pre so that you can adapt it to your DSLR cold shoe mount, and it gives you a few other options for mounting. Once I get that sorted out, I will publish some pictures and possibly add it to the Noob store depending on how well it works. For now though, that's still in the design phases. Like I said, I'll try and get a full video review of that unit up sometime next week or the week after, depending on how much time I have over the holiday weekend. Now, moving on from there, the GoPro 3 Black Edition has been announced for a little while, and now it's on pre-sale. You can find it on eBay at exorbitant prices for the people who got theirs early. I've been staring at this for a while, and I wasn't going to pull the trigger on it, but after I found out that it has 2.7K at 30 and 24 frames a second, that was pretty much it for me. The 2.7K is really handy if you need to do warp stabilization in After Effects or in Premiere Pro. If you're running CS6, Premiere has the warp stabilizer built in. And what the warp stabilizer normally does, if you're working with 1080p footage and your final output is going to be 1080p, is it sort of shrinks the video in order to accommodate the rotation that's happening to correct for image shake. Well, with a 2.7K file, you're able to have about 20% extra room around the outside for the stabilizer to shake things out without having an issue with it shrinking down and kind of enlarging different sections of your video. The problem is when you start enlarging the video like that for 1080p output with the warp stabilizer, you start to get artifacting, and if there's any noise or anything, it gets kind of exaggerated because you're stretching the image to cover that extra space that's outside of the frame. With the higher resolution that you're getting from the GoPro, this basically means all you have to do is sort of hold the camera steady, move around, add a warp stabilizer, and you have a $399 camera stabilizer. That also is an action cam and a waterproof camera and has some other great time-lapse features. The GoPro is a little bit more expensive, but feature-wise, it is packing a lot of punch. I know a lot of people are talking about the 4K that's available on the Hero 3, but that's at like 15 frames a second, so it's not extremely valuable for most applications. If you're trying to do some time-lapse stuff with that 4K, that's probably going to work out pretty good for you, but in action scenes and stuff, it's not really enough frames to get things put together smoothly. You're going to end up with sort of a choppy bit of action. Knowing that you can go to higher frame rates at 1080p, like 60 frames a second, and I think it goes up to 120 frames per second at 720, means that if you want to do slow motion with this, you'll also get an excellent quality slow motion frame rate so that you can stretch that out as long as you want. It's a great value, and it makes me really excited about what camera makers are going to be doing with sensors in the future. If you can squeeze that much resolution into a tiny little GoPro camera, imagine what you can do with some of the new CMOS sensors that are in the works. Some of the new excimer sensors and things like that have global shutter now. They have excellent resolution. They have great low light performance. And it's just a matter of finding a way to capture that much data into a medium that isn't overpriced. Canon's trying to do that with the 1DC, which is supposed to have 4K resolution, recording onto compact flash. And if that can happen, it's only a matter of time before we start getting 24 and 30 frames a second 4K in consumer level cameras. Anyway, I am selling off a little bit of equipment to pay for the new Hero 3. So basically, congratulations to the guy that bought my Canon 40mm f2.8. That's a great lens. I enjoyed using it. It's fun, it's tiny, it's really a pleasure to have, but I started keeping track of how many times I actually got out of my bag. And after having it for, I don't know, it's been like 3 or 4 months, it seemed like it spent at least a month in my bag without being used. And the thing is I've got a lot of equipment that I carry around already. There's no point in having an extra lens that isn't really getting used for anything. And so I cut a deal on the website. The lucky buyer paid $130 for the lens, which seems like a pretty good deal to me. So that went out in the mail. Congratulations, man. I hope you enjoy my 40mm f2.8. Now, moving on from there, I just posted a review of the Audio-Technica Pro 88W VHF transmitter. This is one of the lowest price transmitters that's still usable on the market. You can pick up the Audio-Technica 88 Pro for roughly $100. Sometimes you can find it used for $75. Retail, I believe, is $120. It kind of bounces around depending on the website you go to. I believe B&H is offering it right now for a price tag of $109. And I'll post some links in the show notes to where you can pick that up if you're interested. Basically, the audio quality isn't amazing. They don't include an awesome lav mic with this. They include kind of a mediocre one. And if you start looking around for the Pro 88W, you'll see that there are different price levels. One is all the way up to $200. There's one at $169, one at $150 and some change, $120, and so on. And if you start reading the description, you'll notice that each one of those more expensive units includes a slightly nicer condenser microphone, or excuse me, it's not condenser, just a regular microphone lav mic that comes with that. I believe the most expensive model does have a battery-powered condenser lav mic that comes with that uses phantom power from the built-in battery, but that's another story altogether. Anyway, if you're going to get up to $200, I don't know if I would spend the money on a VHS system when you could go with a UHF system. The Samson Airline Micro is about $240 on eBay right now, and that's probably a better deal if you're going to get up in the $200 range. If you're only spending $100 or less, the 88 Pro is something to consider. If you can get your microphone closer to your speaker, you'll get better audio quality. And a lot of times if you're shooting in a scene, you can't hide a field recorder close enough, or your boom mic might not be close enough, or you'll have some obstacle to get around, or maybe your actor or actress is working by themselves and they don't have anybody to boom the mic for them or what have you. A lav mic really comes in handy, especially if you're doing something like this where you're just talking to the camera. That really can increase the quality of your audio. Now, I will say that the VHF system is kind of susceptible to frequency crosstalk. If you're in an area with a large population and a lot of radio waves, VHF is not the best way to go, especially the 88 Pro, which basically has two frequencies to choose from, an A frequency and a B frequency, and the frequencies are listed on the back, but that doesn't give you very many selections to choose from to kind of select a channel that isn't being used. So if you're in a dense area, say you're at a convention, you're covering an event, or you're in a major city, you might want to go ahead and buy it from Amazon, test it out, and return it within the window if the frequencies are being used in your area. Make sure you think about that before you jump on a VHF system. Now, audio quality-wise, the transmitter and receiver do generate a bit of noise, but if you watch the video that's posted, I'll have a link for it in the show notes. You can basically see that I show you a little demo in there that gives you an idea how to remove that noise. You can go to Audition if you want to get fancy, and Audition has a copy noise feature that allows it to grab a noise selection and use that as a print to remove the noise from the audio. If you're lazy and you don't want to do that, or you want a faster workflow, in your effects section in your Premiere editing window, go over to Denoiser and drag that onto your audio clip. And it's just a matter of setting the thresholds for those to find the settings that work best to remove the noise from the audio. Once you do that, the audio is completely usable and it sounds pretty decent overall. It's not amazing, but especially for stuff like YouTube or internet-bound stuff, I don't think anybody's going to really get upset about the audio quality, especially when you consider the price versus some of the more expensive units. Now, there was a question in the comments on that video about about the 88 Pro that didn't really didn't pertain to that very much. Basically, they wrote in and wanted to know if you could plug a Rode VideoMic into a wireless transmitter. Well, make sure that you know what your wireless transmitter requires. In the case of the Pro 88W, it uses a mono input, which means if you plug in the stereo output of the Rode VideoMic, you're going to short out the leads and it's probably not going to work very well for you. If you, on the other hand, are using something like the Sennheiser G2 that I'm recording this on, that takes a stereo input. The phantom power to power the microphone is DC, but the audio signal that comes in is AC. Since the microphone is self-powered, the Rode VideoMic Pro uses a battery, it is protected from the DC output of the G2 into the microphone. So you can feed that directly into the microphone and out at the receiver end. Also, if you use the Airline Micro, it works the same way, and the Airline Micro is extremely handy because it is only about this big, and you can basically clip that onto the rubber bands of the Rode VideoMic and use that as kind of a handheld wireless boom mic to get in close as you can with your audio. That makes it pretty handy if you are trying to sneak it into a place or hold it around, or you just want to walk around with it on a hand grip or something like that. Just remember that that doesn't necessarily work with the 88 Pro. If you have any other wireless transmitter questions, be sure to send them in. Also remember, if you're getting a VHF unit, that it is frequency rated for certain areas. The same with the UHF. So keep an eye on the frequency bands, especially UHF. If anybody tries to sell you a frequency rating between 700 and 900, those frequency spectrums are off limits and they're not allowed to be used in the United States. Now you can use them in the United States, but if you have LTE networks in your area, or if you have a lot of, I don't know, police running around or ambulances driving all over the place picking up dead people, or whatever ambulances do, those frequencies are being shelled out to emergency vehicles as well as LTE networks, and you could end up getting crosstalk or becoming a violator and using a frequency that is supposed to be designated for the safety vehicles. If they catch you, I think there's a fine of like $500. So just keep that in mind if you try to use illegal transmitting frequencies on either VHF or UHF. UHF especially, because that has a little bit longer reach, and I believe those are 3/4 watt transmitters on a lot of the VHF units, which means they could interfere with those sort of things. So just keep an eye out for that. Finally, touching base on this whole podcasting thing, I'm still kind of working out the kinks for this stuff. I'm going to start kind of displaying some of the stuff that I'm talking about on screen as I go along. So if you guys see something on there and you want it to be more in depth or what have you, definitely send in your questions and whatnot. I'm going to post a question submission form on the website probably this week or next week so that you guys can start sending in questions about audio gear, equipment, and what have you. And I'll try to answer them on the podcast as well as cover the week's stories that I've posted on the site. Hopefully you guys are finding this useful. I will continue to work on it and refine the process, and maybe this setting is a little bit more comfortable to do this sort of thing. But that's all I've got for now. Thanks for listening / watching to the new podcast, thingamajigger, whatever, and I will talk to you later.